What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we've got to take a look at some new Brobnar cards, which are going to be coming out as part of the Worlds Collide expansion of Keyforge. We've had a weirdly large amount of Brobnar cards revealed, given that, of course, the focus this weekend has been on the Saurian Republic and the Grand Star Alliance, given that, of course, they're the new guys in town. Well, today, ladies and gentlemen, today we're talking Brobnar. Now, we have already previously mentioned Irestaff. This was part of the official announcement over on the website. It is an artifact that gives you an amber, and it's got an action that enrages a creature and gives that creature a +1 power counter. Now, this has confused a few people. I have seen it stated that enraging gives you a +1 power counter. Unfortunately, not the case. You enrage a creature and give it a +1 power counter. Enrage means you put an enrage counter on that creature, and then they can only fight, and then when they fight, you remove that counter. So what you essentially do here is you force one of your creatures to fight, but you buff up its power while doing so. That sounds alright to me. So let's have a look at Alaka, and I should mention that the images here, some of them are from Brad Minig, Troy Winters, some of them have been popped onto Reddit. Thank you to everyone that's been sharing these images around. You guys rock. Although special shout out to Brad, who has shared a bunch of images and who I incorrectly didn't credit in a previous video. Brad, you rock. I'm sorry, I've already messaged Brad, we're fine. So, Alaka then. What's Alaka do? Well, it's a 4-power creature with no armor, and it reads, if you have used a creature to fight this turn, Alaka enters play ready. I adore this, ladies and gentlemen. This is absolutely brilliant, because generally speaking, one of the real downsides of Brobnar is that it forces you as a house to fight, which can be really bad for amber generation. Well, the good news here, okay, this does in fact force one of your creatures to fight, but you then have Alaka entering play ready, which means Alaka can be used to reap. I mean, this reminds me very, very much of Silvertooth, and anyone who's ever used Silvertooth will know, you play it down, you reap with it. Now, there'll be the odd time where you have to take out something like an Ember Imp, but generally speaking, you'll play it down, you'll reap with it, and it'll probably be gone by the next time you have a Shadows turn, but maybe you get to reap with it a second time, who knows? With Alaka here, it's a very similar thing, except you've got to have used a creature to fight. Huge downside, of course, is that Silvertooth is often a turn 1 option. You can only play 1 card, play Silvertooth, reap, it's ready for next turn. Alaka is not a turn 1 option. You've got to have a creature out, and it's either got to be a Brobnar creature, or it's got to be some other creature that can be used. Mac the Knife as an example, which can always be used as if it belonged to the active house, although that's got a really good action which you generally want to use instead of fighting. But that's not the point, it's just an example. Good creature, comes into play ready, but kind of awkward and really not the strongest, although 4 power's alright. How about let's just keep going in alphabetical order, shall we? Berserker Slam. This is an action, and it gives you an amber bonus, and it reads, deal 4 damage to a flank creature. If this damage destroys that creature, its controller loses an amber. I like this. 4 damage will destroy a lot. So we've seen plenty of cards in the past, like Seeker Needle, for instance, and Seeker Needle's fine. I mean, Throwing Stars did basically the same thing, where it does 1 damage to a bunch of creatures. Throwing Stars, Seeker Needle's only 1. And you gain 1 amber for each creature destroyed, but you're only doing 1 damage, so it can be quite difficult to actually destroy something and get the amber there. Well, the great news here is you're doing 4 damage, and 4 damage is good. 4 damage doesn't guarantee you a KO on a creature, doesn't guarantee you'll destroy something, but it gives you a pretty gosh darn good chance of doing so, and I like that very much indeed. I mean, worst case scenario, you get an amber and deal 4 damage. That alone is pretty good, but is this that different from Life for a Life? I mean, look, obviously it is different. Life for a Life does 6, this does 4, but a lot of the time, the creatures that you really want to get rid of will have 4 or less, and Life for a Life forces you to sacrifice one of your own creatures, whereas this potentially gets rid of an amber from your opponent. This is beautiful. But it's only to a flank creature, and that is really the huge downside of Berserker Slam. If this was to anything, I would be happy to just go, yeah, it's better than Life for a Life, I adore it. I still like it, it's still a good card, it's still one I can see people using very nicely, but the fact of the matter is, it is only to a flank creature, so if your opponent's got, I don't know, let's just say Ember Imp, that's a really good card, that they really don't want you to take out, and they know you've got Berserker Slam, just make sure it's not on a flank and you'll be fine, which is a little bit sad. Fyre-Breath. Fyre-Breath is an upgrade, and it gives you an amber bonus like so many upgrades do. And it reads, this creature gets +3 power and gains before fight, deal 2 damage to each neighbor of the creature this creature fights. Now, that's kind of cool. It's kind of like Assault, but instead of dealing the damage to the creature you're fighting, it deals it to each of the neighbors. And this is wonderful. So again, let's take a 2-power creature like Ember Imp that we just talked about. You can attack a neighbor of Ember Imp, and then actually take out Ember Imp while doing 2 damage to another, and you get +3 power as well. I mean, Blood of Titans only gives you +5 power, and okay, +5 is a lot better than +3, but still, you get +3 power while doing 2 damage to 2 other creatures. I mean, this is really good. Once again, it's a Brobnar card. It's really pushing you towards fighting rather than reaping or something else. But if you're gonna be fighting, this gives you a rather sizable advantage for doing so. And if nothing else, you still get the amber bonus for using it, so yeah, colour me impressed, ladies and gentlemen. I adore this. This is a really nice upgrade. Certainly, if you're going for something like Might Makes Right, trying to get rid of 25 power worth of creatures and forging a key, you'd rather have Blood of Titans, but in a lot of situations, I'd rather have Fyre-Breath. That extra damage, I mean, we've seen on things like Calfine, for instance, that extra damage can be really, really nice. Incidentally, if you put it on Calfine, then you do 4 to each of the neighbours, and that's kind of hilarious, while making Calfine an 8-power creature. Just putting it out there, that might be a fun combo for you to have a play with. So Shorty's Brew then. Now Shorty's Brew is one of these cards. We had a picture of a bunch of them laid out in a cabinet for you to go and see. So we've not got the best image ever, but we can see it and we know what it does. And ladies and gentlemen, that's good enough for me for now. What we have is an action card, and it may or may not give you an amber bonus. We unfortunately can't actually see whether it does, which is sad. And it reads, play, give a creature 2 +1 power counters. Now, once again, we are right back into this whole, hey, Brobnar like to do nothing but fight scenario. But if you're fighting, this is going to give you one whole heap of an advantage, ladies and gentlemen. This is really, really nice. As a side note, looking at the card, it looks like it might not give you an amber bonus. It might have just covered too little of the card that we can see it doesn't. But that is, it's more of a good estimate rather than me actually being sure. But giving a creature 2 +1 power counters is great. It builds up your power. And Brobnar love this. You can have something like Lollop the Titanic, or you can combo it with something like Might Makes Right so you can forge a key more easily, or one of my favourites, Into the Fray. Into the Fray, you play it, and for the remainder of the turn, a friendly Brobnar creature gains fight. Ready this creature. Now, I've always been a fan of trying to get Skirmish onto a creature and then rolling with Into the Fray. But if you can get Skirmish and then play something like Shorty's Brew, maybe even Blood of Titans, you can have an absolute monster. And of course, if you can ever play Shorty's Brew on a creature that also has Blood of Titans, you're looking at +7 power. That is, yeah, that's fairly ridiculous. And finally, having a little bit of a look at Skloll. Skloll is a 3-power creature with no armor, so slightly weak for a Brobnar creature. and it's got Assault Free. That is to say, before it attacks, it deals 3 damage to the attacked enemy. So I talked about Fyre-Breath not being like Assault. Here's a nice example of Assault. And it reads, after an enemy creature is destroyed by Skloll's assault damage, give a friendly creature a +1 power counter. This is not destroyed by fighting. This is destroyed by the assault damage. So what you really want to do is attack a creature of 3 power or less, or I suppose any creature where 3 damage will destroy it, or less damage. And then you take out the creature, and you get to give any friendly creature a +1 power counter. It doesn't say this creature, it doesn't say other friendly creature, it just says a friendly creature. So for that reason, you can put it onto absolutely anything. And this is nice. I mean, I could mention stuff like Might Makes Right and Into the Fray and Blood of Titans. We just kind of went through those exact examples. So adding power counters here is very much like adding power counters with Shorty's Brew. Having said that, it's kind of weird because in Age of Ascension, it was Untamed who were adding all the power counters. Now Brobnar are like, oi, now it's our turn. Either way, these cards look good. These cards look like they're a lot of fun. 3 of the 6 Brobnar cards we've seen add power counters. That does seem like it's going to be a little bit of a trend. But I would very much like to know what you think about all of these cards, so please do let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitter at the Wossy, where we talk about games like Keyforge and any others that take my fancy. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross and you've been watching Wossy Plays.